Actually, my first experience with Dreamwell, and I think it was either their first or second year, was auditioning for a role in Of Mice and Men and having to turn down the role because I was too busy. And they don't let me forget that. But about a year or two later, they did a production of Someone Who'll Watch Over Me that I auditioned for and became part of that cast, and shortly after joined the board, and I've been involved in to one degree or another ever since. So probably close, somewhere between 16 to 18 years of Dreamwell. My first impression of Dreamwell was that it was a group of people with a lot of energy and a lot of desire to do shows that either weren't being done enough around or weren't being done at all, or that they felt they needed to provide an opportunity for actors that wanted a slightly more professional feeling experience, but that maybe was inaccessible to them through, say, Riverside or some of the other professional theaters in the area. And so that was exciting to me. I think certainly from a participation with actors and crew members, etc., I think Dreamwell presents an opportunity to do very different kind of shows that you normally would not see done in a, quote, community theater setting. It certainly can be more challenging to the technical crew because of the small, our small venues and our technical issues. But I think for the actors, especially, it's provided a great opportunity. I mean, you're not going to see Iowa City Community Theater, Washington Community Theater. You're not going to see them do half of the shows that we do, and certainly not in the kind of intimate, close-up setting that we choose to do them in. And I think for the community, of the benefit of that is obvious, is they get to see shows that really wouldn't be done otherwise. Occasionally there's some overlap. The university does some shows that we've done in the past, or vice versa. But for the most part, I think you could go through any one of our seasons and pick half of the shows and say, this was not going to get done in this area at all if Dreamwell didn't do it. And I think the audience gets the benefit of that as much as the actors and crew members and certainly directors. Honestly, I think, when you think about some of the board members that are currently on the board, Chuck, certainly, and myself, Steven's been around for a long time. I think the greatest thing that Matt and Sharon in particular, because those are the only two board members that I worked with very closely or for a very long time, or two of the founders, is they were never interested in running this thing forever and exactly the way they wanted to. They actively sought out people with different artistic visions, different ideas, and welcomed them and made them part of the board. So I think the theater that Dreamwell that exists now is significantly different than the Dreamwell when I first started. And I think that's because of the people that Matt and Sharon and Paul certainly, and Allie's been fantastic. But the structure that they created to allow for other people to come in, change what Dreamwell was, affect it, and then continue on and reevaluate that from time to time. I think Matt and the founders in general couldn't have done a better job in creating a theater that would function well without them. And that's to their credit. We'll miss him, certainly. And we'll make Sharon audition for shows every now and then, too. So the first show that I did for them, Someone Who'll Watch Over Me, I didn't find out until a little bit later that it was actually a copy of a script of it that I had floated around among some other friends that they'd gotten a hold of and decided they wanted to do it. So I think they had an interest in the beginning in the kind of shows that I have an interest in as well. And my background is that I studied experimental theater at New York University for about 3.5 years. going off on a tangent here a little bit, one of the really cool things that one of my professors told me was, as an artist, not just an actor, but as an artist in New York City, you were probably never going to get a chance until you knew exactly what it was you wanted to do. So she actually suggested what her and her friends did: go to another town, smaller market, work together, figure out what it is you want to do, and then you can take it anywhere. Well, I feel like that was what everybody involved in Dreamwell wanted to do to begin with, was figure out what it is we're good at and what we want to do. So when I got involved with them, it was like, okay, I want to do the stuff on the fringes of modern theater. I want to do the stuff that's a little more experimental. I want to do the stuff that kind of stretches the convention and maybe takes it back to a little bit more pure storytelling. And they've given me the opportunity. And I was artistic director for about 6 years, early on in Dreamwell, and that was kind of where the board and I kind of all met together and said, let's push in this direction. You know, we'll still do some things that people are familiar with, but they've got to be kind of classic, and they've got to be a little, I don't know, bend the formula a little bit, even if it's something that's been done before. And yeah, I love it. Whenever we look at scripts, it's give me the weirdest thing, give me the oddball, and I'd be happy to do it. When I was the artistic director, I felt like that was really probably where I've had the most impact on what Dreamwell's become, because I really worked to make us push ourselves and look at the idea of shows that other people hadn't done. And I mean, as a board, they took a leap. We took a leap of faith in saying audiences will still come to these kind of shows that they maybe hadn't heard of and maybe didn't know that much about, or based on the title alone, like Puna, even though that was a little after my time, that people will still come to see those shows. And I think it's worked. And I can't take sole credit. It was the board giving me the faith, and then also saying, you might be going too far on this one. But there's a lot of experiments we did that maybe haven't worked as well. But thankfully, Dreamwell's managed to incorporate the ones that worked and the ideas that we've had, and kind of set aside some of the less successful ideas. There was somebody on Facebook asking, what's your favorite play you've ever directed? And I had to say Cock. But that partly feels to me like where I really kind of everything clicked as a director. Actually, my favorite theatrical experience with Dreamwell was a show probably 10 or 11 years ago, or longer, called Wake. And it was a group of us that wrote the entire piece ourselves, directed it as an ensemble, and performed it as an ensemble. So it was completely from the ground up, created through improv and kind of theater games, and we ended up telling a story about artist reaction to times of great tragedy and grief or pressure. And it was shortly after 9/11. And I think we did a great job of creating a play that was about what artists go through after something like that, without ever actually talking about 9/11. So it wasn't specific to that. We took international stories as well, and Chuck Tofano was part of that. Scott West, Christy Hartsgrove, now Christy Hartsgrove Morse, Chaz Hallworth, and then we had a bunch of other people kind of help out in smaller capacities in it. But it was a lot of fun, and Chuck still talks about it. It would probably be Lysistrata as well, but not for the salsa incident, but for the fact that I played the spirit of reconciliation, and was decked out in Britney Spears drag with a feather boa, and got to use the old chairlift at the UU as my slowly raising up to the level of the stage with arms and boa out. That this chairlift that was always in our way whenever we performed at the UU finally became a pivotal part of the show, and I got to be a part of that. Yeah, that's probably that, and our old retreats. You've only been to a couple of the retreats, and in the last few years they've been in someone's house here in the area or at the library, but once upon a time we actually rented a cabin out in the woods in the middle of winter and roughed it, played in the snow, and that was a lot of fun, a lot of bonding. Unfortunately, you have to have a group of people that doesn't mind being away from home for a couple of days, but a lot of the really still continuing ideas of Dreamwell came about at those, what we used to call drafty cabin retreats. So that's a good memory as well. You know, in the you can never know exactly how your audience is going to react to things until they get there. Especially darker material. Like, darker material can cause some unusual reactions in people. And I remember when we did Death and the Maiden, which is an extremely heavy play about a woman years afterwards being convinced that the man who stopped at their house was the man who tortured her many, many years before. And she decides to take her vengeance out on him. And there are lines about sodomizing someone with a broom handle. And one particular audience member laughed harder at that than I think we've had any laughter at any of our comedies, or almost any. And that was a lesson in you just can't tell what's going to bring out like raucous, uncomfortable laughter out of somebody. So yeah, I don't know that I'd call that a fondly remembered story, but it is unusual. Opening weekend of Cock. Yes, we had a woman and her boyfriend who came in and seemed a little odd at the beginning. They ended up sitting. We had that space. We had the audience on both sides of the space, so up on our normal stage area, and then further on the floor. They sat up on the stage area. She reacted very vocally and very animatedly to almost everything, especially the treatment of M, the one of the male characters, and who we think she knew him, the actor. And then at a certain point in the show, got up, loudly proclaimed, "I gotta pee," during the performance. Found her way around, tried to go into the closet, then was finally ushered outside the space and did not return, if I'm correct. Yeah, I think her boyfriend finally convinced her that it was probably not a good idea to go back in. But live theater, yay. One of our extra performances of the show, that the lights would just randomly shut themselves off for sometimes a couple minutes at a time. And to the actors' credit, they kept going. I think they all seemed to recognize that the script itself was more important than necessarily the visuals of it, and they, at least at that point, decided we're just going to keep on going, and they didn't miss a beat. Not a beat. Just kept going, and the lights came back up, and there were a few audience members who obviously knew it was a technical problem. There were also a few who weren't sure if we did that on purpose. And so, if you can pull it off where they wonder whether it was intentional or not, I think you succeeded. You know, it probably would be Someone Who'll Watch Over Me, the first show that I did with us, which we then did again about 5 years later with the exact same cast. But it was a 3-person show, prisoners, an American, an Irishman, and an Englishman that were prisoners in a Middle Eastern prison, terrorist captivity of some sort, kind of finding their humanity or trying to refine their humanity under those circumstances. And, I got to listen to Matt Faldudo try out an Irish accent. I got to perfect my English accent. The gentleman who played the American got to sing a lot, and out of the three of us, he was the only one that should have been singing at all. Unfortunately, Matt and I did have to sing a little bit as well, and it was interesting. But we worked with Jerry Rowe, directed it both times, who's been a huge supporter and former board member of Dreamwell, that has since retired from directing, but thankfully is still a strong part of the theater community, and you can't say enough about how great he was to work with as a director. So that's probably why I remember it so fondly. So many, many years ago, during a production, it was Enemy of the People, that we did, and I was actually supposed to be leaving town, and one of the actors had to drop out because his wife had a complication with her pregnancy. I hadn't left yet, so Angie Tombson asked me to step in. I stepped in. One of the cast members was a really young woman that had not done anything with us before, and her mother and her aunt came to see the show probably 2 nights, I think. And shortly after the show, I received a Facebook message complimenting my performance, and we got to talking, and she is now my wife, Kristen, who is also now a board member of Dreamwell. So Dreamwell got me married.
Yes.
Happy birthday, Dreamwell!